Well, welcome back to the Church Tech Probs podcast. I'm Jason Chisholm. We're here with Rick Fair, and thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we're going to be talking about acoustic guitars. Rick, how's it going over there?
Oh, it's doing pretty good. We're just trying to stay out of a severe thunderstorm watch here in DFW right now. But other than that, it's going a shade since last week. So,
Yeah, I
but
see that.
yeah, other than that, yeah, we're doing pretty good. And this will be a good discussion today because we were talking before we got started. Acoustic guitars are just a huge part of praise and worship, and it's sort of that foundational instrument. I like to think in a lot of ways of the sound you're looking for when you're playing praise and worship. Even Southern gospel. I think that type of guitar is just so important, and there's a lot of choices you've got out
Yeah,
there. And the big thing is, how can we best run it in a sound system? Because I have heard some amazing guitars sound absolutely awful
yes.
without the right type of direct box. Um,
Well, if you think about bluegrass
yeah,
players, they don't even plug their guitars in, so they're miking their guitar. And
that's
if you look
right.
on our previous podcast talking about microphones, some of those condenser mics would work great on an acoustic guitar.
The blue, specifically the one I showed last week,
Mhm.
the blue condenser, I think is
Yeah,
awesome. Just such a great mic. It works really well for acoustic instruments, acoustic guitar, mandolin, even
right.
violin. It
Yeah,
would work for any of those. But for purposes of keeping noise down, I think by and large, most people have moved to direct boxes and running on the onboard piezo system
yeah.
on acoustic guitars. I know that's where we started years and years ago with this. Yeah, a funny story. Jason is still using my first Taylor acoustic.
Yep, it's
Um,
right over there.
that guitar in the back right there.
That's
I bought that in the year 2000.
right.
That is a 2000 Taylor 310 CE.
It still sounds great.
It's gotten better as it's gotten older.
Hmm.
Bought it from a little small music shop in Waco where we grew up, and
Right.
I used it for years until I moved up to a 9 series, and that is a horror story of many calibers. Um, Taylor, I love Taylor. I'm one of those that I'm a huge Taylor fan, and I'm a huge Breedlove fan.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't fall in the mold of where most people do, and they're like, "Oh, you gotta have a Martin, you gotta have a Gibson." I own all of them,
Right.
but the the strange thing, and I was telling Jason before I got started, the guitar I pick up more than any other guitar is not a Taylor. It's not a Breedlove. It's a Takamine.
Takamine. Old school
Uh,
Takamine.
Old school Takamine. There's a country artist that did a lot of crossover Christian music too, named Steve Warner. He was
Yep.
very popular in the '80s, early '90s, and he had a deal with Takamine in, I believe it was throughout the '90s. It's a very solid guitar. I was telling Jason, the thing that amazes me about it is every time I record this guitar with a mic, I can literally put it on EQ, and it is one of the most flat, responsive guitars I've ever heard. Just across the board, it's just a very consistent guitar. They're hard to find now. They've been
Right.
out of production for years, and I
Long
think
time.
Steve is the only one who still gets them made from Takamine.
Yeah.
But mine is a '98 model. So mine was near the kind of end run. I think they canceled by the mid 2000s, but it's a very good guitar. It's a cedar top, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
Right.
Um, so we're going to kind of look at different guitars and also DIs. And one of the questions I think I hear the most from young guitar players is, what acoustic guitar do I start with?
I started with an old Washburn guitar. It was cheap $300 guitar from Lone Star Music in Waco, Texas. That was my beginner guitar.
Yep. I think we all bought stuff from Lone Star.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to Halsey down the road for band instruments because we were both in
Uh-huh.
band. But if you want
Right.
guitars, you went to Lone Star.
That's right.
Um,
Edgar over there.
Edgar. Yep, I remember him very well.
Yeah.
Um, I had a Fender,
That's right. Yeah.
$100 Fender Acoustic. That's what I started on, and I'm telling you, the action was this high. The strings were that far off of there, and it was one of those kind of watershed moments in my life where I've never backed down from a challenge, but I just remember being about 12 and thinking, I'm not going to be able to ever do this. If this is how these dudes are playing,
Right.
there's no way. I guess it was about 16, 17, because I had basically given up playing acoustic guitar, swore it off, and said I'd never touch an acoustic guitar in my life.
Yeah.
Because I got my first electric I had was a Stratocaster.
That's right.
Yeah, it was a
Yep.
Mexican Stratocaster, and the action was so much lower. I'm like, I can play this. I can play this, and started playing in bands and stuff. And I walked into that Lone Star that used to be in Waco, and they had just started carrying Taylor. And I that guitar that you got back there was sitting on the rack, and I remember picking it up thinking, "This is like the only acoustic guitar I could ever play because the action's low enough."
Yeah, I was excited about Taylor's because that's what Chris Tomlin was playing, and some of the
Yeah.
big name Christian praise and worship guys were. That's what they used back in the day. Chris Tomlin still plays Taylor's. Um, so
And your 12 string you've got was owned by Billy Foote,
yes, was
the
he's
the one
written.
we've had so many issues with.
Yeah, he's written a lot of wonderful worship songs, but I did buy it
Yeah,
from him.
and the thing about that guitar, it's a 355. It's a Taylor
Correct.
355. It did not. Did it have a pickup when you bought it?
Yes, it had a just a cheap pickup in it that he had put in it, and I switched it out with a Fishman.
Yeah, you switched it out with the Fishman. I think it's a prefix system you switched it out with.
Correct. And
Um,
he had done some adjustments on it so he could lower it down a half step, and so we kind of have to keep it lower to half step.
that guitar has. This is just kind of a good thing to know when you're dealing with the kind of mid to high grade guitars. If they've been setting for a long time with the truss rod and the action, the way they're setting, that guitar, it's been this way for 20 years.
Right.
Uh, I have tried so many times to adjust that guitar to get it to play normal and standard. That guitar is just the wood has molded itself to like, a half
Right.
step down.
It still sounds
And
amazing a half step down though. I just capo everything if I
just
need to get
capo it and go on with life. That's
right.
what you do with it.
Yep.
And what we used, and this just kind of shows our ignorance when we were starting out. I don't even think they had brands, Jason, the direct boxes.
Yeah, I don't
If you've been following us in the past weeks, we've talked about that uh, sound system. We built at a small church in Waco a number of years ago. We didn't have much money left over, and the direct boxes were truly an afterthought.
right.
Uh, we didn't even consider it. And I remember um, I was talking to my spouse about this, and we were having a discussion about years when I was playing years ago, and
Hmm.
I was telling her about building that sound system, and she said, "Yeah, you guys, from what I remember, didn't have any money at all." I'm
No, it
like,
was
"Yeah,
yeah, not a
yeah." If you remember, she went to First Woodway,
that yep.
the big church in town. They had money for everything. They had an
Oh yeah.
orchestra.
It was
What
nice.
did we
Yep.
have? It was you and me.
That's yep.
And I just remember the direct box thing because every time we'd hook it up, it would hum.
Yeah, it would.
And we'd pick up radio stations.
We did.
The grounding was so bad in that church that we'd pick up radio stations. And I'll never forget, it was actually one Sunday when she was there. And I forgot, it's been 20 years. I forgot about this. She was there one Sunday and she said, "Yeah, we heard a radio station playing over the speakers." And I got to thinking, how did that happen? And what it was was those cheap direct boxes we were using were acting as antennas
Right. Yeah.
because they didn't have a ground lift.
But we also picked up truckers driving down I-35.
We pick up CBs.
CBs.
Uh,
Well, we also,
yeah. What was it? The church was about 2 miles away from
yeah, from,
35.
yep,
Yeah,
on
something
Maria
like
Road.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. But I remember the valuable lesson we learned out of that because I for years, and like I said before, I'm a historian. I pack rat and keep notes about things. And one of the things I kept a Word document about things not to do with sound systems in the future. Was you've got to have a direct box that's got a ground.
Yep. Got the ground lift on it.
Yeah, you have to. And fortunately, today we're much better.
Yeah. Makes a
we're
big
using
difference.
a company called Radial now. I think for the price, there is not a better company out there that makes cheap direct boxes that one are built like tanks. If
Right.
you've looked up radial boxes, they are literally built like tanks.
Yeah, I won't buy any others.
I switched over to radial years ago, and we finally got the church over to them a couple years ago, and there's just no looking back. They're the best ones out there.
$100 direct boxes.
We probably paid $20 back then for that one we were using.
Well, I go to the local music store and buy the cheap, look at the cheap ones that they have, and it has the local music store's name written on it. Such and such music. It'll have a black box with their name stamped on it for $40 or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Bert in the back shop was probably buying a bunch of those cases and taking some wires and plugs and making them. That's how it was done.
Probably so. There's no telling. But I have a couple of those, and
Yeah.
they're definitely not the greatest quality, but in a pinch, they work.
Yeah, but the thing is the grounding. You need the grounding correct, or you're going to get those weird mishaps like we've been
Right.
talking about. Especially, um, I don't know why acoustic piezos tend to act as microphones. They are microphones. Don't
Right.
get me wrong. Piezos are microphones,
Right.
but they tend to accent more of the noise than a lot of different mics do. Magnetic pickups,
Right.
like on electrics, not as much. But yeah, acoustics you got to be real careful with.
Well, and
So
not every
yeah,
acoustic electric guitar has a piezo system in it.
right. I have one. I've got a $1,000 Martin. It's a copy of a double 18.
Right.
Basically, it's like a DX series. Um, yes, I went to the dark side. I bought a Martin just to say I had one.
That's a great bluegrass guitar.
It is. I like it. It does not have a pickup.
Right.
You got two choices there. You're either going to use a microphone, pick it up, or you're going to have somebody install one. They're not that hard to install
Right.
because the piezo systems are. It's just the saddle
Yeah.
is what you're replacing. So you could really do that with a. I don't advocate going and drilling into your guitar if you don't know what you're doing. Of course, people call me. I don't know if you heard it. Yeah, people are called me. But so I don't advocate drilling into your guitar if you don't know what you're doing. But you could get conceivably $100 piezo system, LR bags.
Right.
Fishman makes some low end ones, and it's a Saturday job. You change the strings, do it while you change the strings. Put a
Mhm.
piezo in there, and you go to the plug, the strap plug, and just change it out and put the jack there. That's what most people do,
Yeah.
unless you're, some of the other brands of guitars that have to be different. Breedlove's one of them that has to be different and put theirs on the lower bout. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, um, but yeah, that's something you can do. The other option is a microphone, and my thing on that is if you've got stage noise, you really need to take that into account. Um, Most people don't take that into account, and then you got 3 or 4 instruments up there, the noise floor adds up, and you're getting feedback. So if you're starting out, microphone's gonna be what you're running with. But if you get to the point to where you can get a guitar that's got, a piezo system, run with it because it's the best way to go.
Mhm. Sure.
Um, both of our Taylors we started with had piezo systems, but yeah, you had to install one in the 355. Um, there's one guitar I will talk about, and it's a horror story. Uh, I had a 912 CE. I don't know if you remember the 912. It was that sunburst one I had.
I do remember that one.
That 912, it was the first series of that Rupert and Neve setup where they ran the 3
Mhm.
knobs.
Yeah.
That first series of the Rupert and Neves on Taylors, they were mid-2000s. Mine was '06. They had a ton of problems. I bought this guitar sight unseen on eBay. This is how I used to roll back in the day. I don't do that
Mhm.
anymore. I don't buy a guitar unless I actually play it now. But when you're younger, you make questionable decisions, and this is one of the more questionable decisions I made. The sight unseen I bought for $2,900, a 912 C.
Yep.
So excited about it, get the thing in, and it sounds beautiful. Just acoustically, it is a gorgeous sounding guitar. Very dark, a lot of rich overtones to it.
Mhm.
Piezo didn't work
Ah,
at all. And I just remember thinking, well, these guitars are 38 new, so this guy just put the no piezo working discount for $1,000. And so I'm thinking, I like the guitar. I like how it played the action. I got it awesome. It just was great. So I called Taylor. And here's my horror story with Taylor. I just bought this guitar. How much is a new Neve system to put in there? $2,200.
yeah. Oh,
And I'm like, well, that's over the cost of a brand new 9 Series. Well, what am I gonna
uh-huh.
do? And so I'm going back and forth on it. I'm like, do I install one myself? I mean, this is a very expensive guitar.
Mhm.
And I'm like, do I install one myself? I did. I ended up putting the same Fishman prefix system that you got in the 355 in
Oh,
this
yeah.
$4,000 Taylor. So it had 2 input jacks. It had the dead
Uh-huh.
one from the
Wow.
name system, and then on the bottom bow, I drilled a hole. My dad and I drilled a hole, and I ran it
Oh,
in right there. And so basically, what it is the old input jack for the Neve system. I just cut it off. It was dead, and I
yeah.
just replaced the piezo bridge,
Wow.
cut all the wires out of the Neve system,
Uh-huh.
and rerouted it for the Fishman prefix.
That's crazy.
Don't buy a guitar sight unseen. Um, that's the moral of that story: is don't buy one sight unseen, because I'm telling you, you do not know what you're going to end up with. And I almost ended up with about a $4,000 paperweight. Um,
That's mm,
uh, when I was playing with Boyd over at First Hewitt, when Boyd was still there, that was around the time I was mightily struggling with that guitar. Every week it was something
yeah.
going wrong with it. So I ended up selling that guitar. I ended up selling it to a kid that I don't really think he understood the ramifications of what he was buying, but he paid me 3 grand for it.
Yeah.
I had 45 in that guitar with just weird
Mhm.
things. I've never bought another 9 series since. And now I'm not saying 9 series are bad guitars. I mean, they are the
Right.
artisan level quality guitars. I think Taylor just had a bad go with those initial Neve systems.
Probably.
The new ones, I have an 8 series now. Um, 0 issues. It's a 2nd gen Neve system. I mean, it sounds good. I don't think it's as good as Taylor advertised it to be.
Right.
Um, With that being said, one of the things I wanted to talk about was looking at specific DIs for acoustic guitars. They exist, and I recommend them. One of the guitars, I don't know if you see it back here, is my number one. This is what I call my number one. This electric, it's a John Petrucci signature Ernie Ball Music Man. I've owned this guitar since I was 19. This thing right here, switch right here, piezo system. I can run the piezo like an acoustic guitar and a combination of the magnetics to get a really interesting sound here in the middle. All the way down, I'm magnetic pickups only. All the way up, I'm piezo. And I
Nice.
don't know if you can see, it has two
Oh yeah.
jacks. So what you do here is the magnetic runs through one, the piezo runs through another. This guitar with the right acoustic preamp sounds about as convincing as any Fishman prefix system I've ever heard.
Wow.
Now, I've upgraded this thing over the years. This is a 2004 model. I guess about 7 or 8 years ago, they came out with a new system here for the
Mhm.
piezo's. See, because I don't know if you can tell, but the saddles themselves have the magnets on there,
Okay.
on the top of the magnets, or on top. The magnets are on top of the saddle, and the back of the system is you got the battery compartment for it right here, but you've got adjustments right here for high, low, treble, everything
Yeah, that's
for the
cool.
piezo system.
All right.
It's a big task I've had over the years because I've tried to, as much as I love acoustics, a lot of times I like traveling with one guitar and just using that one for everything. There is a preamp that I use with it, and it's called the Fishman Aura Spectrum DI. It's basically this. It's a preamp and a DI together. So it's a preamplifier and a DI.
Okay.
What the Fishman system does is it's the first one I know of on the market that has impulse response technology. IRs, um, more kind of, on the recording side of things. Impulse responses are used a lot in the distorted guitar world to sort of emulate real room sounds. Like you can take a microphone, a decent flat microphone, create your own impulse responses, and make a very cheap sounding plug-in for distorted guitar sound realistic.
Right.
Well, Fishman decided to do this in a different type of concert halls with an acoustic guitar. And so this system will take a piezo like off of my guitar over there, or just a regular acoustic guitar that sounds kind of flat, kind of lifeless. And it just adds this element of space and air to it. That's the only way I can describe it. It takes a very 2D sound and makes it 3D, and it complements so well in a mix. They're great. I think for anybody using acoustic guitar, that is like the de facto standard. If you've got $300 to invest on the top of your acoustic guitar, that is the preamp to get. You can update it on your computer. You can hook it up through USB. I have some for my Steve Warner model, my Takamine, and then I have some set in there for my Petrucci back there. The profiles are very different, but you can do a lot of work. It's also got a tuner built in. Everybody loves tuners, right?
That's
You
nice.
got to
Yeah.
have a tune. So it's got everything. I mean, it could truly be for an acoustic player. It could be your all-in-one pedal if
Yeah.
you're not wanting to do some crazy effects or delay or anything like that. It's just such a good pedal. I've had mine for about 7 years now. Um, I went to a show where Petrucci was playing, and one of the times I went backstage and saw their rig, he took a group of us on tour. That's how I learned about that pedal. Um, I was just very impressed with it, and he was just using an electric guitar and running it through there, and it sounded amazing. Uh,
Very
cool thing
cool.
about it is, with the USB side of it, uh, there is a community online, a very active community that shares presets that you can kind of try out, do different stuff, and see what works best for your guitar. Um, highly recommend them. They're good pedals. You can find them used on Reverb for I think about 200, 200, so they're worth it. Um, I was trying to think too. The world is so different of acoustic guitars is so different than it was when we were growing up.
Yeah.
Um, I was trying to think if I was going to make a best budget recommended guitar, what would you think would be like one of the better sub $1,000 acoustics out there?
Yeah. I'm not sure, but I've seen these new Yamaha guitars, which have been kind of interesting to me because they've got built-in reverb and they sound pretty good, especially for like a beginner just learning how to play. You don't need
Mhm.
anything fancy, but I mean, it's got a pickup in it and it actually has built-in reverb and chorus, and you can actually add some effects to what you're doing with that guitar.
Yeah, I played one at Guitar Center actually a couple months ago. I believe the one I played was they called it a red label,
Yeah.
and I was shocked, and it was like a $399 guitar,
Yeah,
and
they're
I
not
was
that
just
expensive.
shocked at how good it sounded, for the price, and so, that's the thing I think 20 years has kinda done for us is acoustic guitars now are really in a place to where you can buy something even sub $500 and get a very good quality instrument.
Right.
Uh, my favorite, and the only reason I think I'm so in love with them is I went and toured their facility 2 years ago. Was Breed Love
Oh
out in
yeah.
Bend, Oregon. Um, we were driving to Seattle because we always go out to the West Coast, out in
Hmm.
the mountains there, and we had a day where we were going to spend in Portland. But we didn't really spend our time in Portland. We stopped in Bend, Oregon, and I spent 3 hours at the Breed Love facility. I was so impressed with those people.
Yeah.
Um, I have I've got a good relationship with Ernie Ball as far as electric guitars go. I've toured their facility multiple times, and you look back there, you're not seeing the 15 other cases that
Yeah.
have Ernie Ball guitars. Um, I can say this. I've always felt Ernie Ball was sort of the pinnacle of what you expect of a still family ran music maker.
Hmm.
Breed Love is up there with them. I was so impressed with their facility. Um, and we're not talking about the insane $3,000 or $4,000 ones. Jeff Bridges, the actor.
Yeah.
Uh, Jeff Bridges has his own acoustic guitar made by Breedlove,
That's cool.
and they're using myrtle wood. And the biggest thing about Breedlove is they're big on myrtle wood. Which, if you've ever been out to Oregon and you go out on any beach out there, there is a ton of myrtle wood.
Yeah.
I mean, just metric tons of it. I own a $2,600 what they call an organ concert, myrtle wood.
That
It's
sounds
a
good.
very Oh, it's beautiful. It's a very specific type of guitar. Um, I have another one that they call a ghost burst, where it's like white on the outside and there's a burst that goes into myrtle wood, and
Mm.
it's using cedar on the back. So it's a very strange guitar, but sounds really good. And I know I'm talking higher prices right now, but they make two lines. I'm looking on their website right now. They make two lines that start about $449. They have the Discovery series, and then they have the Pursuit series.
Yeah.
I can walk into any Guitar Center, and as long as the guitar was set up right from the factory, and no one's beating them to death or whatever, I can walk in and pick up any of those Discoveries or any of those Pursuits, and you will get a very competent sound out of that guitar for the price. I'm telling you, so much better than what we dealt with 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You can buy a guitar around $500 that will hold up. I believe in what I saw, and I'll tell you what I saw at a Breedlove's facility. Now, these are Korean-made guitars. A lot of times, the way that works is they make them over in Korea, they ship them in boxes, and then they just send them out to the stores. From my understanding of what Breedlove's doing is they're having them made over there, but then they bring them to the factory and they just do fine-tuning adjustments to make them play better. Filing down the frets, making sure the frets aren't cutting your hand, checking the action, doing things like that. And so there is a level of quality control I'm seeing there that I don't often see. I know my $150 Fender I started with all those years ago had none of that. It was like playing a slab of wood.
Pretty much.
But these are competent guitars. I can say I would probably take. They have a 749. They have a bunch of them at the 749 price range. I could pick up any of those guitars, put a new set of strings on it, set it up, adjust the truss rod, and I would go play that anywhere. That's how impressed I am with them.
That's great.
They're good guitars. And so, in all this we're talking about, a lot of this is trying to say, you're interested in playing praise and worship. The cost of entry is not as high as it used to be.
Right.
It was much higher for us 20 years ago than it is today. I would say, and this just tells you how bad inflation is right now. That guitar you got behind you, that 3 Series I bought, I paid $12.99 for that guitar. I'm gonna look on Taylor right now and see how much a Taylor 310 is right now.
Well, now they've got the 100 series, the lower
They
end stuff
added all
too.
those new series. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, well,
You
the
can get
index
them.
for inflation's not as bad as I thought. It's about 1,700 now if you want a 3 Series.
Yeah. I mean, the lower end Taylors are decent. I mean, especially for a beginner guitar, if you want a 100 series.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot. See, I forgot all about that. That they make the 100 series, and then they have the mini series too.
Yeah, that's
You know, it's
true.
funny. I played one of those a couple months ago, and it was a Koa mini.
Wow.
That little guitar played well. I was
Yeah,
surprised,
the
and
GS Mint.
that's
Yeah,
another, yeah,
yeah,
GS Mini. I
yeah,
think it was like $700.
yeah. I have a friend that has one of those, and it sounds really good, especially the pickup, and it's really decent.
Yeah, so there's options out there. Yeah, I kind of toot the horn of Breedlove just because I toured their facility. Next
Right.
time I go out to California, I'm going to try to tour Taylor's facility
That'd
if
be cool.
they allow it.
Yeah.
I try to. My thing is being the type of lawyer I am doing business. I like going and seeing where my money goes when I buy something from a company and what they're doing
Right.
with it.
Yeah.
I've been impressed by Ernie Ball and I've been impressed by Breedlove. I want to see what Taylor's doing because yeah, they are. Those GS Minis are good guitars. I'll be honest, I haven't played a 100 series. I've never got a chance to play one. I played a 200,
Mhm.
and I thought the 200 was very similar to the 3 Series. I didn't think the finish, the thing I remember about it was I didn't feel like the finish was as good as it is on the 300 series.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, they played very similar. So we've been talking about Breedlove and Taylor a bunch. Gibson um, is more higher end. I mean, I've owned a
Yeah.
Hummingbird.
Yeah. I would like to get a Gibson acoustic. I would like a J45.
I've never owned a J45. I've owned a Hummingbird. I say owned
Yeah.
because I sold it. I had issues with the truss rod and was just an older
I
one.
remember. Yeah. I like the guitar.
I need to buy a newer one. Um, I'm trying to think of any other companies out there. A weird one is Ibanez.
Yeah. They do have
Ibanez
acoustics.
make some decent acoustics. Been kind of impressed by them. It's funny, but I go to Guitar Center and I go to the cheap guitars first.
Right.
I, I don't immediately flock to, oh, here's a $5,000 guitar. I learned with my spouse not to do that. That I'm not supposed to spend $10,000 on a guitar at a time. So what do? I go to the cheap one.
Impulse
Um,
buying. Yeah.
yeah, the impulse buy guitars. I can justify $300 or $400, $500.
Right.
Um, I've been impressed by Ibanez. Um, namely, the kind of funny is their acoustic basses. They're like $499 for
Yeah.
great.
I've seen them. I've never played one before, but
They're great. They're awesome. I love
Iban.
them.
I like Ibanez bass
Yeah.
guitars. They do sound good, but I have never played the acoustic one.
I've got one over here. Um, I've got a higher end bass right here. This is um,
Yeah, that's nice.
this is a multi-scale.
Hmm.
So the frets are fanned. This
Huh.
is a fan fret model. So you look at the frets are
Yeah.
angled.
Right.
This is such an awesome bass.
Yeah.
It's Bartolini. It's got Bartolini pickups in here. I had those changed out when I bought this thing. Put the Bartolinis and beautiful finish. I mean, gorgeous looking guitar.
That is nice
Um,
guitar.
it can't keep 9-volt batteries. So
Really.
these Bartolinis are so hot.
Hmm.
It seems like every time I record this thing, I'm putting a new battery in it. Other than that, it's
Wow.
fine. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's awesome. But yeah, to me, Ibanez is always the only two companies I've ever thought of about basses is Ibanez and Fender, like a Fender Jazz.
Yeah.
I still have a Fender Jazz. I just don't play it very often. I like that 5-string over there. Ernie Ball makes good basses, but I just never really had the gumption to sink $2,600 down on one of their basses.
Right.
Especially if you've ever seen their 6-string basses.
Hmm.
I mean, the fretboard is
It's
that
pretty
wide.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to have big hands
For sure.
play a 6-string bass.
Yep.
But I think there's a lot of good stuff out there. I'm really impressed.
Yeah.
And more than anything, I want this video to kind of be an encouragement that if you're thinking about getting into playing, do it.
Yeah.
Just don't think about it. Just do it. Save up some money if you want to get started. I think it's a great thing to do. And it's one thing I've kind of seen in recent years with my son being in band. I mean, musicians are not in the numbers that they were when we were growing up, Jason.
Yeah.
That's one thing I'm noticing is the number of musicians are going down. So I mean, if you're being led to play, you need to play. That's why I got into it. I mean,
Exactly.
the barrier to entry is so much lower than it used to be, and utilize that. Um, and if you're over a sound system, at the church trying to figure out, what can I do to add another kid that wants to play and wants an opportunity? Radial DI,
That's it. Yeah.
Radial DI, $100. If the best $100 you ever spend on a DI because you won't have a problem with it. Hard stop. You're not going to have a problem.
For sure.
Um, EQ, that is a whole separate topic. I really want to spend some time, and I was thinking about this. I want to start going through a series of, okay, so you're looking at your mixer. What are the things we need to train people at the church to do if they're running the soundboard?
Yeah,
I think we could do a very good series talking about the basics. We can't cover every mixer, but
sure.
we could go over the basics: EQ, compression, gain staging, things like that. The stuff that I feel like gets lost in translation, that everybody looks at, oh, it's the fader. This is just a fader.
Well, we can try to do some video examples on my board here at the church.
I think it would be awesome.
You're coming to set up some
Um,
new microphones for us in a few weeks, and maybe we can shoot some video with that.
I want to get a lot of video of this because we're going to be setting up a lot of Sennheiser mics.
Right.
A bank of what, 7? We're doing 7.
Right now I have 6 and I'm getting 7 more.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's what it is. Okay.
13
We're gonna have a
mics.
bunch.
Yes.
We're gonna have a bunch. That'd be cool.
It'll
I
be
think
fun.
that'll be good.
We're about
We'll
out
get
of
some video on
time.
it.
We're about out of
Yep.
time, but if you have questions or problems that you're having with your sound system, shoot us an email, churchtechprobs@gmail.com. Or if you're watching YouTube, just leave it in the comments below. We'll see those comments.
Yeah.
If you have an issue or you have a question about acoustic guitars, Rick is the go-to guy for acoustics. So feel free to reach out to us, and we'll see you next week on the podcast. As usual, this podcast is brought to you by Paradigm Media Productions. Rick, it's good to see you again. Let's do it again next week.
We'll do it again next week. Everybody have a great week.